I'm an engineer. I have a bachelor's degree, I love my work, and I love solving complex problems to achieve real-world results. But apparently, this is, say it with me, problematic. This is Donna Riley, head of Purdue University's School of Engineering Education, and she has a problem with engineering, the way engineers are taught, the way engineers' work is valued, and she has a problem with the fact that engineers have the audacity to place high value on complicated work. I'm not kidding. Her big bad boogeyman is what she calls rigor, as we'll see in the next clips. Now, I'm going to start out by giving her what I think is the most charitable interpretation possible given what she's actually saying, but we will quickly see that this charity is undeserved.
Now, you are going to be speaking on Wednesday, and your topic is rigor. Tell us what it's about.
So rigor is a concept that's been used really against a lot of engineering education researchers to devalue our work. And it's even used within engineering. So for example, an engineer that uses less complex math in their work is seen as being less rigorous than someone who uses more complex math. And my question is, why do we use that as the measure of the value of our work? Because if we looked at, say, social value, what's the impact of an engineer's work on saving lives, for example, we might come up with a really different prioritization of work in engineering.
Now, I don't fundamentally disagree with this point. I do think that part of being a good engineer is doing work that matters, not just work that's challenging. So you could argue that, when comparing two engineers, simple engineering with high social impact should be on par with complex engineering that has low social impact. I'd say that's a very fair point to make as far as society in general is concerned. Alternatively, Donna could be saying that maybe it's not complex engineering that we should value, regardless of its social impact, but high-impact engineering, regardless of its complexity. And again, it's difficult to raise any strong objections to that idea in these general terms. But she isn't talking about society in general and how people on the street think of engineers. She's talking about what educators should focus on, which is a very different beast, as I'll explain in a moment.
And then in engineering education, what I think's happened is that because of that devaluing, we've said, oh, we're going to talk about rigorous engineering education research, but I wonder about who's being excluded when we say that. Because oftentimes the people that are doing the research that has, say, higher social value, and your sort of arbiter of the value is not how much math you have in it, it's are you making a difference? The people that are doing those kinds of work are often people of color, women, and also white men, but people from working class backgrounds, disabled people often care about a different set of hierarchical problems than just what has the most interesting math in it. So I wonder who we're excluding when we say that rigor needs to be the measure. And it's not clear yet how that is going to affect engineering education research, but I want to ask that question so we can have that conversation as a community.
The reason why engineering education should focus on rigorous engineering and why it should value rigorous work is because that is the primary ability which determines how many doors will be open to students once they graduate. Teaching complex engineering with little mention of its social impact does not preclude students from doing simpler engineering in the future with higher social impact. But teaching simpler engineering so you can focus on its social impact does preclude students from doing complex engineering in the future. It's a one-way street. You'd be railroading students into smaller job markets that probably pay less. Great job, you really know how to set up students for success. It's the same reason why schools don't encourage students to become bus drivers and coal miners, and why they don't stop teaching students when they know enough to do those jobs. It's not because those aren't legitimate jobs, and it's not because those jobs are often done by poor people and minorities. It's because stopping education at that point would severely limit students' opportunities. If college students only want to do simple stuff, maybe they shouldn't be in college in the first place. However, to allay Donna Riley's fears, I will say that, in my experience, rigor is not the only criterion by which engineers are judged once they graduate. Take me, for example. I did not have the best GPA coming out of college, but I still received 4 job offers before I even graduated because I was able to demonstrate that I was thoughtful, creative, and a good communicator. Indeed, I've continued to receive similar comments on performance reviews since I started working, none of which have anything to do with rigor or complex engineering skills. I think it's pretty clear to any engineer that, in the field as a whole, rigor is not the only thing that matters. That being said, however, if I couldn't do complex math and detailed rigorous analysis, no one would touch me, and with good reason. Rigor is not the only thing that matters, but it is undeniably the most important thing. The Tacoma Narrows Bridge doesn't care about your social awareness, the Hyatt Regency Walkway doesn't care about your skin color, and the Space Shuttle Challenger doesn't care about power structures and privilege.
So I wonder who we're excluding when we say that rigor needs to be the measure. And it's not clear yet how that is going to affect engineering education research, but I want to ask that question so we can have that conversation as a community.
So that really ties in with another topic of the old sink or swim motto. Explain how those two go together.
Exactly. So rigor itself as a concept is often about physical exertion. You talk about the rigors of cold, the rigors of exercise, and one of the things that happens in sink or swim engineering education is you say, oh, can you stay up all night to finish that problem set? And when you have a diverse student population, there's a number of students who can't do that. Maybe they're a low-income student who has to work a second job on top of their work study, and they just can't stay up all night. Maybe there's a student who has a disability that prevents them from being able to tax their body in that way. Or maybe you have students who are adults with families and they have other obligations where they need to be home tending to their children. And so when we have an environment that requires that of students, we're losing a lot of talent.
Well, what do we have here? It looks like you can get your degree online from Purdue University. Could this be the answer for those students that Donna Riley is so worried about? Let's find out. Purdue's online students enjoy the same rigorous academic programs as on-campus students, but with a much more flexible class schedule. Assignments, discussions, and other coursework are posted each week in the virtual classroom. You will not have to log on at set times each week, but you will be expected to submit assignments before specific deadlines. This asynchronous learning format allows you to keep your current commitments to your family and job while still pursuing your degree or certificate. Well, would you look at that? Purdue University has already recognized that this is a problem and created a solution for it. You'd think that the head of the School of Engineering Education would be aware of this teaching style that her own school employs, which addresses her exact concerns. But you'd be wrong. And if you want to do simpler work with higher social value, as Donna Riley mentioned earlier, you can even get associate's degrees. I'm sorry, Donna, but how much easier do you want this to be? But as I promised, it gets worse. In Donna Riley's mind, rigor is not just a practical barrier for people who don't have the time or energy to pull all-nighters, which, as we've seen, it isn't. But rigor is actually a social construct designed to disenfranchise women and minorities, and to assert a discipline's maleness. Excuse me, I meant to say it's white, heterosexual maleness. Yeah.
So turning to rigor's etymology reveals its punishing and exacting nature. Quoting from the Oxford English Dictionary, rigor is defined as harsh inflexibility in dealing with a person or a group of people. Severity, sternness, cruelty, strict application of laws, and in the plural, repressive measures. Harshness that is difficult to bear, exactitude, and precision. And then if you go to the Latin and examine its etymon, which is also rigor, then you see it defined as unbending quality, stiffness, rigidity, numbness, unyielding hardness, frozen condition, the quality of being stiffly erect, tautness, inflexibility again, sternness again, severity again, and uncouthness.
Well, there you have it, folks. Rigor is phallic, rigor is evil, even though literally no one uses it this way. Well done, Donna. What's your next big revelation? The fact that the word franchise has the word his in it, which is why women don't start as many businesses as men do? Get your head out of your vagina.
So if rigor is defined in these ways, what are its opposites? And more interesting for engineers, other opposites might include creativity, flexibility, imagination, innovation, play. These are key characteristics of design. So rigor is in many ways the enemy of design. Can you envision new possibilities rigorously?
Yes! Yes, you can! There is a specific process for doing exactly this, one which I myself am certified in as a design engineer. It's called Design for Six Sigma, and it's a process which allows engineers to envision new possibilities rigorously, in an organized and exhaustive manner. It's exactly what Donna has just claimed cannot exist, and I'm certified in it! I'd like to take you through a quick example of Design for Six Sigma just to show you that, yes, you can envision new possibilities rigorously. These are the Six Sigma tools I was taught, although other engineers may call them by different names or may have learned slightly different tools. I'm not going to go through all of them, just the ones that best illustrate my point for this video. For this example, let's imagine that there's no such thing as a doorstop. No one has invented it yet, it's just a common inconvenience when a door doesn't stay open. Yes, I know that sounds a little far-fetched, but I have seen very similar oversights in my own field. For this project, our problem statement would be something like, there is a problem with standard doors because they don't stay open when people want them to. We know this is a problem because people are using improvised door holders or wasting time holding doors manually. Yes, once again, this does sound a little far-fetched, but I have seen very similar things in other areas. Quite frankly, I find it amazing what people will put up with instead of trying to find a permanent solution. From this problem statement, and from the requirements of our company, we derive our objective: design and test a door-holding device by, let's say, May 1st, 2018. Next, we move on to in-frame, out-of-frame. The goal of this step is to gather as many random ideas as possible, and then to debate which ones are most relevant or most valuable to the objective. Ideas inside the frame are completely possible, ideas on the frame are debatable, and ideas outside the frame are ones that the team has decided are not worth pursuing. It's important to keep this and other documents throughout the entire process in case you start second-guessing yourself, or if management asks you if you've even considered certain ideas. And just for reference, this step is usually done with post-it notes on a large whiteboard or in some other collaborative context where you physically put ideas on a board. Once we have our frame, we can then sort these ideas into categories on an affinity diagram. Try to find 3 to 5 big categories that these ideas fit into. These categories become the customer needs in our customer needs matrix, which we will be skipping as I promised. So let's skip ahead to the really interesting stuff, starting with the MORPH matrix. The MORPH matrix is where, after fully defining the problem and identifying our customer's needs, we can start to come up with complete ideas for the product we will design. The functional requirements are taken from your functional diagram, another step we skipped for the sake of time and relevance. These functional requirements are basically just individual mini-tasks that the final product must accomplish. For each of these functional requirements, your team comes up with different methods to accomplish them, filling out each row from left to right until no one has any additional ideas. Now that we have our MORPH matrix, we can assemble these methods into complete products. Pick one method from each row and combine them into a rough picture of what the new product would look like. Here we see 4 different product ideas generated from the MORPH matrix. Idea 1 would be the traditional wedge-shaped doorstop. Remember, we're assuming that doorstops haven't been invented yet, this is just an exercise. Idea 2 would be the kind of hinged folding doorstop. Idea 3 would be the fixed magnetic doorstop. And idea 4 is something that I thought was original, but it turns out someone else has already made it, and it's pretty cool. I'll put a link to it in the video description so you can buy it if you want. Now that we have our product ideas, the question is, which one do we pursue? Which idea is the best one? Well, that brings us to what's called a PUGH matrix. This is probably my favorite tool, and there are many ways to build it, but for this example, I've gone with the simple plus-minus ranking system. To use the PUGH matrix, you take your product ideas from the MORPH matrix, compare them feature by feature, and see which idea does the job best overall. This list of required features comes from some other steps we skipped, specifically the customer needs matrix and the house of quality. Once you've compared your ideas in each category, you add up their net scores and see which one is the best overall. In this case, the traditional wedge doorstop wins, so that's the one we would go off and design. The reason the PUGH matrix is my favorite tool is because you can use it for almost any decision in your life, like choosing a new car or a new place to live. This is definitely something you should try out for yourself. I am struggling to understand how an engineering educator and the head of engineering education at a top engineering school is unaware of design for Six Sigma and thinks that you cannot envision new possibilities rigorously. This is like if a math professor was unaware of imaginary numbers. It wouldn't be absolutely crippling, you could still do your work without that knowledge, but you'd probably view that professor as an idiot who doesn't deserve their post. Hint, hint.
Feminist scholar Melody Shank notes that rigor is unfitting to social activities, activities of nurturing and caring, mentoring, or listening. And what about emotions, she asks. Can we laugh rigorously?
Yes, we can. I've found that humor is a great tool for conveying complex ideas and for making rigorous work more fun. And I don't have to shoehorn it in either. If I'm talking to someone who is also familiar with the tools and methods I'm using, then it's very easy to slip in a joke every now and then. But let's be honest, Donna Riley does not seem like the kind of person who could make or take a joke, so I guess this isn't a very surprising statement.
Work is critiqued for lacking rigor if questions are not framed in particular ways, if certain tools are not employed, certain processes not followed, and certain modes of interpretation not applied.
Listen, Donna, if certain tools are not employed, if certain processes are not followed, and if certain modes of interpretation are not applied, people can die. One of the Design for Six Sigma tools is called FMEA, which stands for Failure Mode and Effects Analysis. This is a matrix where designers catalog every way in which a system could fail, the effects of each failure, and the severity of each effect. It's a rigorous tool that is, quite frankly, grueling to use, but it saved my ass many times, and the asses of everyone around me. Oh, but please, do go on about how bad it makes you feel when people criticize you for doing a shitty job.
So, what is the purpose of rigor in our community? What ends does it serve? Or as Gary Downey might put it, what is rigor for? One of its purposes is a thinly veiled assertion of white male heterosexuality.
What?
One of its purposes is a thinly veiled assertion of white male heterosexuality.
You know, if white male heterosexuality keeps people from dying and losing fingers, I think most people are okay with that.
One of its purposes is a thinly veiled assertion of white male heterosexuality. We have already seen that the term has a historical lineage of being about hardness, stiffness, and an erect quality. Its sexual connotations and links to masculinity in particular are undeniable. My visceral reaction to many conversations where I have seen rigor asserted has been to tell the parties involved, male and female, to whip them out and measure them already.
Ah, yes, because people competing with each other and critiquing each other's ideas must be all about penis envy. Ladies and gentlemen, behold this professional engineering educator in all her professionalism.
In the article, they interviewed another slide rule enthusiast who said, and I quote, "Slide rules made me miserable in school, but now I collect them with a passion. I know it's weird to talk about passion in connection with slide rules, but they fascinate and delight me the way my ex-wife never did." They are functional and beautiful. I guess you could say I'm obsessed. Sometimes a slide rule is just a slide rule. But glorifying a tool for calculation, an icon of engineering rigor, and in the same sentence denigrating in sexual terms the woman he presumably once loved, reflects a quintessential sexist engineering culture.
Is anyone else getting an Anita Sarkeesian vibe here? This seems like something Anita Sarkeesian would say. An eccentric man who likes slide rules and hates his ex-wife? Must be sexism. Why else would a man like slide rules and hate his ex-wife? Those two things just never happen otherwise. So at this point, we're only about a quarter of the way through her talk. Honestly, I think I'm just going to leave this here for now, maybe put out a part 2 later, but I think you get my point. If you want to be a good engineering educator, stay away from Purdue, and stay away from Donna Riley.